There are women who disappear so slowly, so quietly, that even they don't notice it happening. Margaret Callahan knew this better than most. The morning it started to unravel smelled like dark roast coffee in October. Maggie had been up since 5:30, the way she always was, before Dennis, before the noise of the day pressed in. She stood at the kitchen window in her robe, both hands wrapped around her Costco ceramic mug, watching the maple in the backyard drop its last red leaves onto the wet grass. The furnace had just clicked on. The house made its small, familiar sounds around her. The refrigerator hum, the tick of the baseboard heat, the creak of the third stair that she had been meaning to mention to someone for 6 years. She was 56 years old, and she had learned to love mornings precisely because they asked nothing of her. She heard Dennis before she saw him, the particular weight of his footsteps on the kitchen tile, the way he moved through a room like it was already his. He poured himself a coffee without looking at her. He was dressed for the office at 6:15, which had been happening more often lately. She always noticed, she had simply stopped saying so. "You're up early," she said, "big quarter close." He scrolled his phone with his thumb, leaning against the counter. He had not looked up. She watched him. His jaw was freshly shaved. There was a precision to his appearance that felt deliberate in a way it hadn't used to. A new brand of cologne she didn't recognize. Something with cedar and something sharper underneath. She asked without planning to, "Are you happy, Dennis?" He did look up then, and the expression on his face, not cruelty, not guilt, was something closer to mild impatience, like she had asked him to explain a concept he had explained before. "Maggie," he set the mug down, "you've just gotten small." He said it the way you'd say the traffic was bad or it looks like rain. A fact, an observation about the weather of her life. Then he picked up his phone, his keys, his coat, and left. The door to the garage closed. The furnace clicked. She stood there holding her coffee mug until it went cold in her hands. She didn't cry. That surprised her later when she thought about it. What happened instead was a kind of stillness that started behind her sternum and moved outward, like cold water filling a room from the floor up. She set the mug in the sink. She watched a single leaf detach from the maple and fall straight down, no wind to carry it sideways. Small, she turned the word over the way you turn something in your mouth to identify it. Not a wound yet, something harder than a wound, something that was already calcifying into purpose. She went upstairs, not to the bedroom, to the guest room, the one they hadn't used since her sister visited 3 Thanksgivings ago. She didn't fully understand why until she was already on her knees at the foot of the cedar chest, lifting the heavy lid, pressing past the folded quilts and the Christmas tablecloth her mother had left her. The manila folder was where she had put it 18 years ago. She didn't open it, not yet. She just pressed her palm flat against it, the way you'd press your hand against a wall to feel if there's fire on the other side. It was still there, she was still there. Before we go any further, if you are watching this right now, stop for 1 second and tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from? How old are you? And what time is it where you are? I read every single one, and if this story is already sitting somewhere in your chest, hit subscribe, because Maggie's story is just beginning, and you do not want to miss what comes next. She did not open the folder that morning. She made the bed in the guest room with the same precise hospital corners she always used, smoothed the quilt flat with both palms, and went downstairs and ate toast she didn't taste over a sink she didn't look into. She moved through the house on autopilot. The dishes, the dry cleaning Dennis had left on the banister, the grocery list she'd been adding to on the whiteboard by the refrigerator for 11 days without going to the store. She was functioning. She had always been very good at functioning. But something had shifted in her chest during the night without her permission. Something load-bearing, like a beam that has been holding weight for so long that no one notices it anymore until the morning it decides to stop. She found the proof on a Thursday. Not because she went looking. She needed to tell herself that at least for the first few days she had picked up his dry cleaning. She had gone to his jacket pocket for the ticket stub, the way she always did, because Dennis never remembered to empty his pockets, and she had learned decades ago not to run his things through the wash without checking. The receipt was from a restaurant downtown, Palio, Italian, the kind of place with cloth napkins and a wine list, and candles in small amber glasses, 2 entrees, a bottle of Barolo, dessert, a Tuesday night in September when he had told her he was at a client dinner and would be home late and not to wait up. She had not waited up. She stood in the laundry room holding the receipt with both hands, and the washer churned beside her and the fluorescent light above her buzzed its one flat note, and she looked at the total, $214, and thought, with a clarity that frightened her slightly, I have not been taken to dinner in 2 years. Not anger, not yet. Something colder than anger. Something that knew how to wait. She started paying attention the way she used to pay attention. Professionally, systematically, without letting emotion contaminate the methodology. She noted dates. She noted patterns. She kept a small spiral notebook, the kind she used to use for case notes, narrow-ruled, green cover, in her coat pocket. It took 11 days to fill 14 pages. She was not building a case. She told herself that. She was simply observing. The phone call came on a Wednesday afternoon. A number she didn't recognize, a 314 area code. A woman's voice. Older, no nonsense, the kind of voice that had spent years managing things men took credit for. Is this Margaret Callahan? It is. My name is Carol Simmons. I was Dennis Executive Assistant at Callahan Group for 9 years until last spring. A pause. I think you and I should have coffee. Maggie stood very still at the kitchen counter. Outside, a November wind came off the lake and shook the last of the maple's branches against the window glass. How did you get this number? She asked. I kept good records, Carol said. I kept a lot of records. That's actually what I want to talk to you about. Before we continue, if this story is speaking to something you recognize, something you have carried quietly for longer than you should have had to, take a moment and leave a like. It tells me you are here, and it means more than you know. Now, where were we? Maggie wrote down Carol's number on the green notebook page she was already on. Below the restaurant receipt date, below the pattern of late Tuesdays, below the name she had found once, briefly, in the upper corner of a forwarded email Dennis had left open on the shared laptop, Trish, and then closed without saying anything because she had not yet known what to do with what she knew. She looked at that name now, at the bottom of the page. Then she picked up her phone and called Carol Simmons back. They met at a Panera 3 miles from the house, far enough that no one Maggie knew would wander in on a Wednesday morning. Carol Simmons was already there when she arrived. A solid woman in a gray wool coat, reading glasses pushed up on her head, a large coffee, and a manila envelope on the table in front of her. She stood when she saw Maggie coming. She did not smile exactly. She offered her hand and gripped it firmly, the way someone grips a hand when they mean it. I ordered you a coffee, Carol said. Dark roast, I guessed. You guessed right. They sat. Outside, the parking lot was gray and wet, and 2 shopping carts had drifted together near a light pole. A woman Maggie's age was loading groceries into a minivan alone, efficiently, without looking up. Maggie watched her for a moment, then turned back to Carol. Tell me, she said. Carol had been Dennis' executive assistant since the year Maggie's youngest started middle school. She had scheduled his meetings, managed his travel, filtered his correspondence, and, this was the part she said with a flatness that made it worse, covered for him on at least 6 occasions she could specifically document, because that was what she had been told her job required. Trish Halverson, 41 years old, a marketing consultant Dennis had brought in on a regional branding project 18 months ago. Carol described her without editorializing, professional history, how the relationship had progressed from project meetings to private dinners, to a situation that had become, in Carol's careful phrasing, structurally embedded in the company's operations. Hess been billing her consulting fees through the firm, Carol said. Discretionary budget, below the threshold that requires board approval. She slid the manila envelope across the table. 14 months, $86,000. Maggie did not touch the envelope immediately. She looked at the number the way she had once looked at case exhibits, without flinching, letting it mean what it meant without letting it move her yet. Why are you bringing this to me? She asked. Carol wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. Because when they restructured me out, Dennis told the board I had performance issues. She let that sit. I was his assistant for 9 years. I have never had a performance issue in my life. A pause. And because I have a daughter your age, and I know what it looks like when a woman has been made to believe she got small. They met 3 more times over the following 2 weeks. The green notebook filled up. Carol's records were meticulous. Dates, amounts, forwarded copies of expense approvals, 2 emails Dennis had sent from his company account that said things a man sends only when he believes no one is keeping records. Maggie organized everything the way she had once organized case files, chronological, tabbed, cross-referenced. Her hands remembered the work before her mind fully caught up. The muscle memory of a woman who had once been exceptionally good at something, it came back like a language she had never actually forgotten. The night before the Regional Excellence Banquet, she stood in the bathroom in her good black dress, the one she had bought 2 years ago for a funeral and never worn again, and looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. She did not think about whether she looked different. She thought about the manila folder in the cedar chest, the offer letter, the commendation from a senior partner who had written, in 1996, in blue ballpoint pen across the bottom of a performance review, Margaret Callahan thinks like a lawyer. This firm would be wise to keep her. She turned off the bathroom light. She picked up her purse. The documentation was already inside it. The Marriott ballroom smelled like warm bread rolls and someone's too heavy perfume, and the particular anxiety of people performing ease, round tables with white linens, centerpieces with ivory roses, a podium at the front where Dennis would stand in 40 minutes to accept the Regional Leadership Award he had been campaigning for since January. Maggie checked her coat at the door and found her table. Carol was already seated 2 tables away, near the back. She caught Maggie's eye once, briefly, and looked back down at her program. They had agreed on this. No signal, no coordination visible to anyone watching, just 2 women who had done their work and were now simply present. Dennis found Maggie at the table just before the salad course. He looked polished and easy, the way he always did in rooms like this. A man fully at home in the light he had arranged for himself. He kissed her cheek. He smelled like the cedar cologne. "You look nice," he said, already scanning the room over her shoulder. "Thank you, Dennis." He moved toward a cluster of board members near the bar, and she watched him go, and she ate her salad, and she waited. She saw Trish Halverson arrive at 7:14. She was not what Maggie had constructed in her mind during the long nights of November. She was ordinary, well-dressed, careful posture. The particular brightness of a woman trying to make a good impression in a room she was not yet sure she belonged in. She found Dennis near the podium. He touched the small of her back once, briefly, instinctively, and then stepped away as if it hadn't happened. Maggie watched this and felt nothing that resembled what she had expected to feel. She felt clear. Dennis was midway through his acceptance speech. Gratitude, vision, the word legacy used twice. When Maggie stood, she did not rush. She walked to the side table where the event coordinator had set up the presentation materials, where the projector laptop sat open and unattended during the speech. She had asked Carol about this 3 days ago. Carol had confirmed it. The laptop used the same password Dennis had used for everything since 2009, their youngest daughter's birthday, backwards. It took her 40 seconds. The spreadsheet was clean and clear and large enough to read from the back of the room. 14 months of expense approvals, $86,000, Halverson Consulting LLC. Every line itemized with the precision of a woman who had once been told she thought like a lawyer. The room noticed before Dennis did. She watched the realization move through the board members like weather crossing a field. One face, then the next, then the chairman turning slowly in his chair to look at the screen, then at Dennis, then back at the screen. Dennis stopped mid-sentence. The silence in that ballroom had weight and texture. It pressed against the ivory roses, the bread rolls, and the crystal glasses, and it did not let up. He looked at her. She looked back at him from across the room, her hands loose at her sides, her face completely still. She said nothing. She did not need to. The divorce filing came 6 weeks later. The board opened an internal financial review within 48 hours of the banquet. Dennis resigned before they could ask him to. The house was hers. She had never taken her name off the deed, a detail he had simply never thought to address, because he had never thought she was paying attention. She was always paying attention. She went back to work in the spring. Not at a law firm. She opened a paralegal consulting practice out of the guest room, the one with the cedar chest, the one she had knelt beside in October with her palm flat against a folder that had been waiting 18 years for her to be ready. The maple in the backyard was coming back green. She did not think about Dennis much. When she did, it was without heat, the way you think about a road you used to take before you learned there was a faster way. Some reckonings don't announce themselves. They arrive quietly, dressed in the ordinary clothes of a Tuesday, and by Wednesday everything is different. Margaret Callahan had waited 18 years for her Wednesday. She just didn't know it was coming dressed like a ballroom full of people watching a spreadsheet tell the truth she had already known. And now I want to ask you something. And I mean this sincerely. Have you ever stayed somewhere longer than you should have? A job, a relationship, a version of yourself, because leaving felt more dangerous than staying? Tell me in the comments, not because I'm asking you to perform pain, but because someone reading your words tonight needs to know they are not the only one. If this story found you at the right moment, leave a like and subscribe. New stories go up every week, and every one of them is written for women who were told they had already used up their share of the story. You haven't,